On today's show, before the Battle of Ontario begins tomorrow, we've got a battle of Locked On podcasts.
We have David and Mikey from Locked On Leafs to talk about key players, X factors, and series predictions.
This is Brady Tkachuk, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to a very special crossover edition of Locked On Senators and Locked On Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm Ross Levitan alongside Brandon Piller. We are also with Mike DiStefano and David Morassutti to break down everything we expect to see in the next 2 weeks as the Battle of Ontario reigns supreme. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Today is Saturday, April 19th, and we are about 24 hours away from puck drop. Game 1 in Toronto, so I'll snap it over to you, Mikey. What was your immediate reaction when you found out that we would be getting the first Battle of Ontario in 21 years?
Super excited. I mean, like, the four of us are kind of at that age where our hockey fandom was kind of built by the Battle of Ontario back in the early 2000s. So, it kind of is a little throwback, and I've got so many memories of, myself watching the early 2000s series, and then, in the first intermission, going outside and just playing some puck and pretending to be McGillney and Roberts and Sundin, crunching Alfie into the boards, scoring on Patrick Lalime. It was a great time, as a kid. So being able to see the Battle of Ontario reborn here is pretty sweet. And I know, Ross, you did the same thing, but at the beginning of the year, we did our bold predictions on the season. And my bold prediction was, I think we see Leafs Sens round 1. That was my bold prediction. We get to see the Battle of Ontario, and it came true. So I also gave myself a little pat on the back, too, for that one.
And we're going to cover everything in this show, from key players to watch, X factors, burning questions, key stats, and predictions at the very end. Let's start with the biggest storyline. Pilsy, for the Ottawa Senators, what is the major impact line that we're going to be looking at?
Yeah, I think there's so many storylines we can go with here, Ross. I think maybe, especially with we got the Leafs guys here, I think I'm going to go with, for the Sens, a big storyline is how are all these new players that have not experienced playoff hockey going to adapt to this? We're looking at Brady Tkachuk. We're looking at Tim Stützle, Jake Sanderson, Shane Pinto, Drake Batherson, Thomas Chabot, like all of the Ridley Gregg, so many key core players of the Ottawa Senators have not had the chance to be in the postseason yet. And you talk to former players and they all say, like Mark Thought said it, the playoffs versus regular season, it's night and day. Like, it is such a different experience, and you can hear all about it. Alfie, Travis Green, they can tell all their players that haven't been there all about it. But until you experience it for yourself, you don't know what to expect. And I mean, what a way for them to experience postseason hockey for the first time, the Battle of Ontario. So everybody's talking about Brady Tkachuk. He got to finally get onto a big stage with the Four Nations face-off. He said it himself, biggest game he's played in his career so far. Well, now he got a little appetizer with that. Now he's going to get the main course with NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. And can Brady Tkachuk bring that style of game that everybody in the hockey world is hoping that he can?
David, what about for the Toronto Maple Leafs? What's it to you that every fan is waiting to find out?
Is this year truly going to be different? Because we've seen it all year long. New coach, brought in a brand new blue line. Is it going to be enough to finally get a second time since the Leafs have been back in the playoffs in this Matthews-Marner that they can get past the first round? They've done it once, but I haven't really done it that much. So is this year truly going to be different? And you look at, the revamp, right? The revamped goaltending, the revamped blue line. There's just a lot of changes that this team has made to get themselves more playoff ready. Are they actually going to be playoff ready? That's going to be the big question every Leafs fan wants to see. Is this group actually going to finally put it together?
Yeah. At the same time, though, guys, the big question obviously revolves around the big four, right? The core four that have returned, that have notably faded come playoff time, right? And can they finally perform in a postseason? I think there's a lot of pressure on those guys, so that's another storyline that we'll obviously be watching. How does Marner and Matthews and Nylander and Tavares perform here in the postseason?
Well, one thing that I think hockey fans as a whole and everyone should be happy about is that both teams, for the most part, are coming in healthy. Looks like we're going to
Yeah.
have two full lineups. Now, Jake McCabe and Oliver Ekman-Larsson for the Leafs and Brady Tkachuk for the Ottawa Senators. We'll even throw Nick Jensen in there, who's been battling through something for the second half of the season. Like, they're all going to play in game one. You're not in a situation where William Nylander's got migraines and can't play like last
Wow.
season, where I mean, it's the
That came out of
storyline.
nowhere. That came out of nowhere too, though, Rossi. Like, he played
Okay.
game 82, then all of a
Right.
sudden he was not ready to go for game one. Just like Joseph Wall was all of a sudden not ready to go for game 7. We're crossing our fingers that that's true, that everyone's ready to go for game 1. But yeah, there was a no-hitter against the Detroit Red Wings yesterday. A lot of business decisions were made. I'm sure it's very similar in your game against Carolina. Let's hope and pray that remains the same come Sunday. You never know what could happen in between today and puck drop on Sunday.
Well, it's just going to be a fantastic series. And my biggest storyline, too, we did a whole episode on these on Locked On Sens, but one that we didn't bring up, and now it's official after those games Thursday that you mentioned, Mikey, where, by the way, both the Senators and Leafs erased multi-goal deficits to win in those games. So both teams are coming in feeling good despite the meaninglessness of it. They are winning their last game. Not only that, since March 1st, these are two of the best teams in the National Hockey League. If you go by points percentage, since March 1st, Senators are 3rd, the Leafs are 6th. And since the trade deadline, where both teams made moves, the Leafs are 3rd and the Sens are 4th. So these are two of the top 4 teams in points percentage since the trade deadline. That's a 20-game sample size. The Leafs are 14-5-1. The Sens are 14-5-2. Just one extra game, one extra overtime loss. So this is going to be a fantastic series. It is the first round experience of the Toronto Maple Leafs against a first-time experience for the Ottawa Senators. Of course, Sens fans are hoping to see the same Brady Tkachuk that we saw in the Four Nations, where the forecheck was just incredible. Just ask Drew Doughty. There's that side view of that hit. Unbelievable, but there also is question marks with that. How do you rein in the emotion of all that? So when it gets to battle time tomorrow night, it's going to be a huge storyline of who's going to be able to be the more disciplined team, because both of these teams are able to burn you with the man advantage. The Leafs have the 4th best power play since the trade deadline. The Senators ranked 10th. Senators, though, it's really strange, boys. Like, the Sens power play at home is top 5 in the league, and their road power play is like bottom 10. So they're going to have to figure out a way to contribute on the road. And I'm not a big regular season guy when it comes to playoffs, but it should be mentioned the Sens have won 5 straight games in Toronto. So at least the experience in the locker room, they've got good memories there. I'm hanging on to anything when it comes to an inexperienced group, just what can give them confidence going into this series. Let's quickly go through the defense, the goaltending, and the forwards. We both had some fun with this on our respective shows, doing the top 10s. We won't dive that deep. We'll point you in the direction of both of those shows. But Mikey, who's got the edge in goaltending in this series? Anthony Stolarz leads the league in save percentage this season. Again, less games than Linus Ullmark. And then Ullmark's got the Vezina trophy in his back pocket, but playoff struggles in the past. Who do you give the edge to in a 7-game series?
Is it a cop-out to say that it's kind of just a wash? Like, I think both teams are happy with the goaltending that they'll have in this series, right? Like, I think clearly Stolarz has performed over and above all expectations. And you know, when you look at the underlying numbers per 60 minutes, no goaltender in the NHL has more goals saved above expectation than Anthony Stolarz. He's been incredible this season. But obviously, as you mentioned, Ullmark on the other side has been great too. Finally the Senators hit on a goaltender, right? Tried on Matt Murray, failed. Tried with Eunice Corpusalo, failed. Senators finally got their guy.
Don't forget Cam Talbot.
Cam Talbot failed. Sens finally got their guy. 4 times the charm. That's a saying, right?
Yeah.
So I think both teams are fairly happy with the goaltending going in. I think it's a pretty even Steven at this mark. Obviously, Ullmark has the experience factor, but Ullmark, played against Toronto last year in the playoffs, and they chased him, right? They beat him in the one game that they played, and they ended up going to Jeremy Swayman from there on out. So maybe that kind of creeps into the back of his mind potentially. But I think goaltending wise, it's a bit of a wash, and I think both teams very comfortable with who's in net.
I agree. Go ahead, Bills.
I think this is different though, Mikey, because in Ottawa, Ullmark is the clear number one guy. Like there's no if Ullmark's shaky game one, do they go to Forsberg like he had with Swayman in Boston? That's not a even consideration in Ottawa. It's going to be Ullmark every single game, unless there's something unfortunate that happens and there's an injury, which knock on wood, we hope doesn't happen. But David, I guess I'll ask you this. Do you feel like it's the same situation in Toronto? Like is Stolarz just clearly the number one guy like the Leafs have had in multiple years? Being like, okay, we're not sure how we're going to play the goalie here. We don't have a clear number one guy we're going with here, or there's been health issues where they've had to change goalies. Is Stolarz easily the number one guy, and you feel the same? He's going to play all 7?
I think so. I mean, there's always a little bit of they went with the rotation throughout the year, and they were trying to determine which guy was going to be the guy, and it took them time for him to figure it out. But the last 8 games Anthony Stolarz had to close out the season made him the unquestionable game 1 starter. 3 shutouts in his last 8 games. He's been one of the hottest goalies in the league coming down the stretch here. And yeah, he doesn't have the playoff experience, and that's going to be something that, will always be brought up when you go into a series like this. But I think he just brings it. There's just a little bit of different confidence with him in that his size is just something that will make this a tough series for the Senators to go up against a goaltender like Stolarz. But yeah, I think unless things really fall apart for him, I think it's safe to say he will be the guy. Joseph Woll, the good thing is you got a guy who in his playoff career has shown that he can come up and perform at an with elite numbers. But I do think that when you look at the durability of Stolarz down the stretch here, Woll, when the big game has come up, it's not even the fact that what he performs in that game, it's can he make it to that game, right? That game 7 last year, everyone kind of had a bit of a different opinion after that game. I think Mike was probably the most distraught after Joseph Woll just couldn't even make it to game 7 after putting up an incredible performance to get the Leafs to game 7 last year. But I think just Stolarz brings he will be the guy unless something happens. We know that there's a little bit of that knee issue that happened earlier in the year, but knock on wood, that's been fine. He's been at a great form, so expect Stoley the goalie to be the one to try to outduel Linus Ullmark.
Yeah, 950 save percentage his last 8 games. 8-0 down the stretch.
What was the 9th game? The last loss?
Doesn't matter.
It's against the Ottawa Senators. That's one of our key storylines going in to this series. Always goaltending, special teams going to play a huge role. But who are some key players to watch? That's next. We'll wrap up today's show with notable stats, X factors, and our predictions. You're listening to a crossover edition of Locked On NHL, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire Stick. Did you guys know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles. They got EA Sports College Football 25, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, and Avowed. as easily as you stream your favorite shows. You can be playing games. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Endless entertainment with 4K streaming. Watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services. You got Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and so much more. I use my Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K for all my sports watching needs, Sportsnet, MLB app, and more. And I can play Xbox exclusive games like Starfield. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen.
Welcome back to this very special Locked On crossover between the Senators and Toronto Maple Leafs. You can follow us wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on YouTube. And if you want to watch me and Mikey snap it around on Locked On NHL, we did that this past Wednesday, available everywhere you get your podcast. Shout out to the everydayers out there that make us your first listen. We truly appreciate you. It's the best time of year. And for the first time in 8 years, the Ottawa Senators are back in the dance. Some people are noting that despite missing the playoffs in 7 of the last 8 years, the Senators do have more playoff series wins than the Toronto Maple Leafs that run to the Eastern Conference Final. Now, look, boys, we're not going to pretend like we don't cheer against the Leafs, even when they play Tampa, Florida, Boston. I believe I said I would have given away Nick Paul for free if I knew he was going to score 2 goals in Game 7 and eliminate the Leafs. But now that we're in a series together, David, I will tell you, I'm happy you guys won a series because I didn't want that pressure on us either.
I think just the idea of going into the series with the Leafs, who are looking to pick up their first series win in the Matthews Marner, and it would go up against Ottawa. Now, it would have been just that much sweeter if they actually needed to do that, but we're not in that position right now. The Leafs have at least that one, and look, it's been close. It's not like the Leafs have been blown away, like other than the one series against the Panthers. Like every series, I have to watch my language because that's how much of the mental battle or hurdle it's been. Game sevens. The one time they didn't lose a series, it didn't go to a Game 7. So if you're the Leafs right now, that's probably a big key for you. Don't let this series go to 7. Should be okay. Like I think that's we've constantly said this on the podcast every single time we're going into the playoffs, and every time we give a prediction. I don't think I've ever really done Leafs in 7, and a lot of our predictions of that have obviously gone wrong because every single time it's gone to 7 in those series. So that's always been a big one, I think, for this Leafs group.
If you're looking at history, though, boys, not to put a little coal on our fire, the Senators are 0-6 all time in Game 7s.
Yeah.
How many of those against the Leafs?
2. There are 2 pieces left from the series back in the day, and they're both on the Ottawa Senators bench. Travis Green, the head coach, Daniel Alfredson, the assistant coach. It leads me in to our next topic, the key players to watch, because I'm actually going with the coaches in this one. I think Travis Green is going to have a lot of pressure on him to line match Shane Pinto, Ridley Gregg, and Michael Amadio against Austin Matthews' line. Earlier this season, again, regular season's different. How many times do we have to mention that? But Shane Pinto's done a phenomenal job covering Austin Matthews and even getting a couple of goals on his own. I think that is an incredibly important matchup to watch throughout this season. And not only the Shane Pinto line, but Jake Sanderson and Artem Zub, the Senators' shutdown pair, needs to be out there whenever Austin Matthews is on the ice. Mikey, what's your top storyline for the Toronto Maple Leafs, or your key player to watch, rather, for the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Well, you just made 5 there, Ross.
Yeah. That's a trick of the
coaches.
I mean, it's so
the
difficult.
Coach that needs to make those the key players.
Well, it's so difficult for Toronto not to just squarely look at the big boys. You know what I mean? Like Matthews and Marner, like those two, there's going to be so much pressure on those guys to succeed. And it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but it truly is those two players. Like, if they can play to their level, if they can replicate what they've done the regular season into the playoffs. Now, again, they haven't done that in years past, but if this is finally the season where it happens, I mean, I think that gives Toronto the best chance to win this series and really take control. If Marner and Matthews can go in and play like the superstars that they are, I think that's Toronto's best chance to get out of the series. So to me, you're looking at key players. It's those two guys. They get going. Good luck to Ottawa.
Yeah, and that's been something we've been focusing on when looking at the Leafs, Mikey, is how are you going to shut down those top players? Like, that's going to be a key for Ottawa. I'm going to emphasize one of the 12 players Ross mentioned there, and I'm going to really focus on Jake Sanderson. This is obviously his first time in the playoffs. He is the Ottawa Senators' #1 defenseman. And look, we made our list of ranking the top 10 defensemen in this series, and it's not even a troll job. We believe that Jake Sanderson is the top defenseman in this series, and he's
a troll job,
and he is in a tier of his own.
He's in a tier of his own.
You're gonna learn, and that's okay to doubt it. Nothing wrong.
Sometimes
with
you get Morgan Riley with a 5th overall pick, and sometimes you get Jake Sanderson.
Listen, I'm not saying Jake Sanderson won't become the best defenseman
already.
Like, when we look back 10 years later, it's like, wow, Sanderson was the best. But right now, I just can't get there yet.
It's okay. Let me set the stage for you, Mikey. He is an incredible skater, and him being a great skater allows him to be an effective two-way defenseman. You will see him be the first guy in on a forecheck, and then he's the first guy back on a back check. The way he's able to make up ground is incredible. The way he's able to toe the blue line, he's really picked up his offensive game. Ross, you know that Jake Sanderson has been racking up the points lately. He set a career high. What did he finish with? 57 points this season.
And that was after having 3 in the first 19 games.
Yeah, and he's shooting the puck on the power play. He quarterbacks that top power play for the Ottawa Senators. He is part of the top shutdown pair for the Sens. Him and Zub are going to be up against that Matthews line a lot of the time. And I think Leafs fans and the rest of the hockey world, they got a taste of what Jake Sanderson can do in the Four Nations face-off. But I think you're really going to start to understand why he's so highly regarded by Ottawa Senators fans and why it's not going to take 10 years for him to be the top guy. I think he's going to be able to show it right now.
Quick correction. He had 3 points during a 13-game stretch where he was minus 12 in November, where the Ottawa Senators were just a shell of themselves. And, oh, yeah, his partner was out of the lineup. So I think another key for the Toronto Maple Leafs is you need to get Travis Hamonic in the lineup because he's been sinking whatever pair he's been playing on. Nice pizza last night in that game, but we'll see if he's in the lineup on game 1. No, boys, it's not a troll. Jake Sanderson is elite both ends of the ice. I think he's even better defensively than he is offensively. He's been, because I saw Leaf fans were pointing at his plus minus this year. Again, you saw that one sample of 13 games where it was not going his way. Only Rasmus Andersson has a lower on-ice shooting percentage for defensemen that played over 1,000 minutes this season. He has been the recipient of dumb puck luck all year, and if not, he might have had 65 to 70 points. Since March 1st, the timeline that I mentioned, the Leafs and Senators have both been the top of the league. Only Lane Hudson, Evan Bouchard, Rasmus Dahlin, who all played more games and had 1 more point, and Cale Makar have more points for defensemen in the National Hockey League. I think that the hockey world is about to see how great Jake Sanderson is. So I love that call from Pilsy. David, who do you think the best defenseman is in the series, and who's your key player to watch?
Best defense in the series, it's the guy that has had to go up against the top players anytime he's been in the playoffs, and that's Mr. Chris Tanev.
Okay.
He was, a big coup for the Leafs in the offseason, what they had to do to bring him in. And, I know some people were a little concerned initially about the length of the contract, but as soon as that guy stepped on the ice and started locking down on the other team's top players, didn't matter. Right? This is the type of defense the Leafs have not had going into the playoffs. You throw out, throw Brady Tkachuk out there, he's going to be seeing a lot of Chris Tanev in this series. Like that's what they brought him in to do. not even just the blocking the shots. He doesn't need to be the most physical guy on the ice. He's just so sound defensively. You know, again, we don't like to use plus minus as an indicator of how good a defenseman can be, but how many shutdown defensemen do you see have an over plus 30, plus minus of over 30? You know, he makes it so easy and so comfortable when you're in those final minutes of a game and you need to hold a lead. Chris Tanev the guy you want out there. He will literally throw his face out in front of a slap shot if he has to. If that's what he needs to do to win a game, he will go out and do that. And that's why I think he is the best defenseman going into the series, just because he is literally the best defender. And like when he's not in the lineup, that's when the Leafs had their struggles. Him and Jake McCabe, that has been a true shutdown pairing. And, you know, even with McCabe out in this last stretch, Chris Tanev has still been arguably the best defenseman on this Leafs team. They have not missed Jake McCabe as much because they have a Chris Tanev back there.
Yeah, I got nothing but respect for Chris Tanev. He is number 2 on our list. I want that to be clear. That said, I think the difference offensively is greater than the difference defensively. And they defend in different ways.
I don't know, man. He might be out for an offensive breakout after tying the game last night. With
18 points. Night. Let's get some notable stats, X factors, and predictions next. This is a bonus crossover edition between Locked On Maple Leafs and Locked On Senators. More on the Battle of Ontario next.
This episode is also brought to you by our friends over at Gametime. The Stanley Cup playoffs are here. And if you've never been to a live NHL playoff game like me, it's unlike anything else. The intensity, the speed, the energy in the building. I can't wait. It's next level. And thanks to Gametime, getting in the door is easier and more affordable than ever. Gametime is the fastest way to grab playoff tickets, even for those must-see matchups like the Battle of Ontario. Prices actually drop as the puck gets closer to dropping. And with last-minute deals, you can save up to 60%. Last-minute deals, 60% off for last-minute sports, and not just sports, comedy, theater, and concerts. All-in pricing. Turn on the all-in pricing feature, and you're going to get no surprise fees at checkouts. And the app even shows you panoramic seat views, so you know exactly what you're getting before you buy. And with Gametime ticket coverage, I know I'm protected, whether it's cancellation protection, job loss assurance, or their 24-hour return guarantee. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
Welcome back. It is a bonus Locked On crossover between the Maple Leafs and the Ottawa Senators for all the coverage leading up to Game 1 tomorrow night of the Battle of Ontario. You can check out both of our podcast feeds everywhere you get yours and on YouTube. Please make sure to make us your first listen each and every day. We're part of Locked On Podcast Network, where we have local experts on the biggest stories. We've gotten through the biggest stories, key players to watch in this series, and now it's time for some notable stats. And I think all the boys in Sens land, all those Sens Central citizens know where I'm going with this. Shane Pinto, I mentioned him last segment. He is on one of the most peculiar runs I've ever seen. We were tracking this before this season. When Shane Pinto gets a point in a game, it is as automatic of a victory as possible. 83 times in his career, Shane Pinto has scored a point in a game. The Ottawa Senators have 137 standings points in those games. It's truly incredible. They are 64, 11, and 7 all time when Shane Pinto gets a point. So that includes 26, 1, and 1 this year in 28 games. You guys might want to make sure to keep Shane Pinto off the score sheet in this series. He is a part of my notable stat. I got another one, but first I'll snap it over to Mikey. What would give the Leafs confidence in terms of a stat this series?
Well, I mean, first of all, I look at the .950 save percentage from Anthony Stolarz over the last 8 games. I do like that. You also look at
such a funny number.
Why is that a funny number?
Because you're just taking out the game where he lost the Ottawa
Well, no,
Senators.
he's won 8 in a row. I'm looking at he's just won 8 in a row. So you're not. You're just looking at his 8-game winning streak. That's why
So
he's won 8 in a row.
Yeah, 3 goals on 24 shots because they got an empty netter in there. That's under 900. David, what do you got for a key stat for us?
I mean, key stat. We were talking about guys, on who we expect to score in the playoffs. Since 2020, William Nylander, the Leafs leader in goals in that stretch. We didn't even bring up Will Nye, the wrist shot guy, at all. And this guy has brought it for the Leafs in the playoffs. 17 goals in 34 games, 32 points. We always talk about the big boys not getting the job done. A lot of the times when series ends and the Leafs have been eliminated, it has, William Nylander is the one that's been kind of excused from the slander because he is one of those guys that can bring it. So watch out for William Nylander because this guy does like to score in the playoffs.
Yeah, he's a stud. I almost put him ahead of Matthews just for a little fun there. I just think he's that. I mean, he's second in the league in goals this year. You have to be aware when William Nylander's on the ice. Pilsy, what do you got?
We talked about special teams a little bit earlier, and I've referenced this stat on Locked On Senators, but it bears repeating because the Ottawa Senators are elite at drawing penalties. And when I say that, they are literally the best at it in the league. This year, they led the league in penalties drawn with 349. They had 9 power play opportunities in their final game of the regular season. And we know the Leafs have that offensive firepower. We know 5-on-5, they have a high shooting percentage. They can really take advantage of scoring chances for sure. So that's why it's going to be key for the Ottawa Senators to be able to draw penalties, to get power plays of their own. And that's where they need to make the most of it when they have the man advantage. So being a team that's led the league in the regular season in penalties drawn this year, was second the last season, and then led the league again 2 seasons ago. That's going to be a key stat for me, is how can the Ottawa Senators bait the Maple Leafs into taking bad penalties and allowing them to get more man advantage opportunities.
I cannot wait for the first time the Leafs Nation has a meltdown when Tim Stützle gets tripped. I cannot wait for it.
Fuck, Timmy Crybaby? Yeah, it's going to happen at some point.
I don't know if he's crybaby. He's just got great edges, and you can't get your stick in there. He and Nazem Kadri were tied for the league with 38 penalties drawn. Brady Tkachuk 4th with 35. Now, a lot of those with Brady's taking someone with him, or he's going with the other guy. But old Timmy Stu got a plus 14 net differential, or plus 19 net differential.
Funny, Pontus Holmberg, 6th in the NHL in penalties drawn per 60. So old Pontus Holmberg can draw himself a penalty too. But I will say, like, special teams, I think is big, and that's something that actually worries me about the Maple Leafs going into this postseason is that their penalty kill has been quite horrendous this year, just 77%. And if you look at over the course of the last few seasons, dating back to the Canadian division year when they lost to the Montreal Canadiens, their penalty kill since then in the playoffs has only been 75.8%. Power play, just 15.4%. So for me, special team success is going to be pivotal and vital in this series. The Maple Leafs definitely need to figure out a way to stop the bleeding on the PK. Don't allow that back-breaking goal, and then they got to find a way to get the power play cooking in the postseason too, because you're not going to win a lot of series if your power play is operating at just 15%.
Yeah, that's fair. Where are you seeing Holmberg 6th? I got him at 17th here.
And penalties drawn per 60.
Oh, per 60. Okay, we gotta make it a little more specific to get him up the leaderboard there.
I mean, the guy plays 4 minutes a night.
Maybe if he was better, he'd play more.
The guy.
I'd rather my top guys are drawing penalties than a guy who's
I'll
out
say
there
he is right behind Brady Tkachuk. Brady's at 5th. Pontus is 6th.
In per 60.
Per 60, correct.
Yeah. Brady's 4th in overall as well, and Tim Stützle tied for number 1.
Yeah, rats.
Number 1.
Rats.
Love that. I just can't. It's going to be full-on meltdown. I can't wait to get the protractor out and make sure everybody knows who's going to their beer league game later on. How Timmy should have stayed on his feet there. He could have stayed on his feet. I swear. It's going to be unreal. X factors in this series. I am going pretty obvious with this one. If the Senators are going to play the style of game they need to win this game or this series, Brady Tkachuk needs to be at the Four Nations level we saw him. Brady Tkachuk's an easy one for me as the X factor in this series. We'll go both Sens, both Leafs quickly. Pilsy, who's your X factor? No goalies. We already goalies the most important.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that.
Yep, I think that's fair. I'm going to go Shane Pinto, third line center. He's going to be a part of that checking line. Travis Green's shutdown line of Pinto with Amadio and Greg. They've been tasked with going up against opponents' top offensive players all year, and they've done a great job of that. That's why he trusts to put them over the boards when that happens. So especially when the Sens are at home, I think we're going to see that third line paired up against the Toronto Maple Leafs top line. And we've talked about it. You've got to be able to shut down the big guns for the Leafs if you're going to have a chance in this. And Shane Pinto's going to be a big part of that. But he also could put up points on his own. And when he does, like Ross mentioned, this team has a lot more success. And I'm looking at Shane Pinto to even get some offense on the penalty kill, maybe a shorthanded goal to get the boys going. So Shane Pinto is going to be an X-factor player for me.
Yeah, I like that call. I think that line, and something to watch for, boys, because I know you guys see Ridley Gregg as just this bottom six pest. Lots of nights this season, he led all Sens forwards in ice time. Travis Green loves him and will use him quite a lot. Mikey, your X factor in this series?
For me, it's Matthew Nyes. I mean, we know what Marner Matthews can do and their capabilities, but just like you guys believe Jake Sanderson's about to arrive and people are going to know about this guy, I think Matthew Nyes is another one of those players for the Maple Leafs. He's become a real key cog on that line there. Nyes, Matthews, and Marner, fourth in the NHL in goals per 60 this season among trio forward lines, fourth in the NHL, averaging 3.6 goals per 60 minutes of play. So Nyes has been a huge player. He plays the right way in and around the net. He can score. He finished with 29 goals this year, one shy of 30. He's been a big time secondary impact player for this team. And, like I said, he scores in and around the net. You look at individual high danger chances per 60 minutes. Matthew Nyes, fifth in the NHL, 5.52 individual high danger chances per 60 minutes. He's someone who I think is going to get a lot of opportunities in front of the net. He bullies defensemen out there, so I can definitely see Matthew Nyes being a big-time X factor for this Maple Leafs team.
David, who do you got?
Well, there's one guy that needs to get a new contract at the end of the year. I'm not talking about Mitch Marner. It's the guy who had the captaincy transferred to Austin Matthews, and that's John Tavares. This is a guy who, scored one of the bigger goals in recent memory when he did help the Leafs advance to the playoffs a couple years ago against Tampa. And, he's a guy that's had an unreal season, turning back the clock a little bit here. And I think going into this playoff series, he's going to have to step up. And if, let's say Shane Pinto's able to keep Austin Matthews at bay a little bit here, you got John Tavares who should be able to step up in these games. And he's been a pretty good contributor this year, right? 38 goals, he almost got to 40, 74.75 games. And, he's been a big defensive. He has a big defensive impact too, getting a lot of defensive minutes. And one of the top faceoff guys. Like, I think you're going to be maybe seeing a lot of him versus, Pinto, Giroux.
Claude Giroux leads the NHL in faceoff percentage this year.
Right. So I'm going to like to see that. The playoffs, it's those little battles you're going to have to win. And I think John Tavares has proven that he has he's really thrived under Craig Berube and not just being able to score, especially at 5-on-5, but do those other things defensively that we really hadn't seen from John Tavares the last few years. So I think John Tavares, he could be in for a really big playoffs this year.
I'd love to see the career head-to-head face-off numbers between Tavares and Giroux. I feel like being in the same division the last 3 years, and then when they were with the Islanders and Flyers, I feel like we said this with Crosby when the Sens played the Penguins last, but they've probably taken like 1,000 face-offs or more head-to-head against each other. Two wily vets that are looking for their first Stanley Cup win. They're actually both looking for their first appearance beyond the second round for Tavares in his entire career, and Giroux got there in like his third year in the league with the Flyers in 2010 to the Stanley Cup final and has never been back. So those are all great points, boys. Cannot wait.
Yeah, and one more stat that I wonder if it concerns you guys, and it's the number 139. You guys familiar with that stat?
No.
That's the number of goals that the Ottawa Senators have scored at 5-on-5. That ranks 31st in the league.
Yeah, and they have gotten better since the trade deadline. I will say that. I'd be curious. Can you pull up that stat since the trade deadline?
Yeah.
Mikey, that's a good stat, but that's why I was talking about how the Ottawa Senators drawing so much penalties. That might be a crucial part of this series for both teams, both ways.
Has to be. Special teams is always the ultimate equalizer. It always is. It's going to be important for both squads. Let me pull that up for you. Goals at 5-on-5 since the trade deadline. The Senators are 10th. 10th since the trade deadline at 5-on-5 goal scoring.
Yeah.
That was a key area they targeted at the trade deadline. Dylan Cousins, great 5-on-5. Fabian Zetterlund, also great 5-on-5. Like, they knew that was an issue. And that's a huge jump in the standings there
12.
in 5-on-5 goal scoring. So
12. Actually 12th. Sorry.
And I got one more stat here for the Leafs. When leading after 2 periods this year, 35-1-1. So not just scoring first for the Leafs. It's having that lead going into the third period. And you know why they have a lot of those wins? Because they got the best defenseman in Chris Tanev in the series.
What'd you say the record is?
Show's over.
35-1-1.
Sens are 33-2-1 when leading after 2 periods.
2 losses. See, you guys suck.
Yeah. At home, they're 18-0.
Too bad they're not going to play a single home game this year. But
at home, when leading after 2 periods, the Sens are 19-0. The Leafs are 18-0-1. So,
but again, Ross, 7 road games. It's all good. Doesn't matter.
I honestly don't. I think it's going to be. It's not even a storyline for me because Ottawa has literally slapped the Leafs out of their own building last year. Just ask Ridley Gregg. I think it's going to be a 70-30 split for Ottawa because season ticket holders were able to get 2 extra tickets at least for each guy. I'm curious to see. There's obviously going to be Leaf fans. There's going to be Sens fans in the building in Toronto. If you look at the final buzzer, the last 5 games when the Sens played in Toronto, I think all the Leaf fans were already in their limousines on their way back to Richmond Hill, Aurora, and Oakville when Sens fans were there celebrating victories at the away home arena for the Ottawa Senators, the friendly confines of Scotiabank Arena.
Well, boys, I think we'll have to reconvene at some point through the midway mark of this series and see where we're at.
No, you guys do great work over there. We like to think that we're making sure Sens fans feel like they are the most important over at Locked On Ottawa Senators. You guys have TSN in your back pocket. You got Sportsnet in your front pocket. Ironically, you guys both work with those networks, but we are here for Ottawa Senators fans, and we hope everybody enjoys this series. The first Battle of Ontario in the social media age. I'm sure it'll be extremely respectful, extremely cordial, and may the best team win. Cannot wait for it all. It starts tomorrow night, Sunday, 7 p.m. in Toronto, Tuesday in Toronto. Then the series will shift to the nation's capital for Thursday and Saturday night. Everything else is, if necessary, we'll reconvene in the middle of the series. For today, we say, get the boxing gloves on. It's going to be a battle of Ontario. For Mike DiStefano and David Morassutti of Locked On Toronto Maple Leafs, I'm Ross Levitan alongside Brandon Piller from Locked On Ottawa Senators. For more from both of our shows, you can find us everywhere you get podcasts, including on YouTube. This has been a special crossover edition of the Locked On Senators and Locked On Maple Leafs podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.